Hi there, and welcome to the Jane Anderson Show. I am so thrilled that you are here and that you're joining us for today's podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, but before I talk to that, I wanted to share with you a little bit about the type of people who listen to our program, and perhaps it might suit you, and you might know someone who might like to listen as well. My absolute focus and obsession is helping women to elevate their influence and to really become exceptional advisors and in their area of expertise, particularly working with B2B. So the people or business to business. So the women who come on this program typically have consulting practices and range from startup right through to those who have had their practices for some time. They have typically 20 plus years experience and they absolutely love the work they do. They love the clients that they work with, and they have built or on the journey to building the practice and the lifestyle of their dreams. So our guest today that I wanted to introduce you to, she's a really interesting character. So she has had her practice for almost 20 years. She is a psychotherapist by trade, but she came from teaching and education, and then also nursing. She has gone on to become an expert in the space around grief and grief, bereavement, particularly counselling and all those sorts of background, but particularly for those who are struggling through grief. But she also has a really interesting side to her practice, which is where she's tapped into organisations who are trying to work with not only to be able to support people who are perhaps going through grief, but in being able to give their team members the skills to be able to work with and support and find the most appropriate way to work with a team member who has perhaps experiencing grief and loss in their life, and how can we help nurture them and look after them coming back to work, which I think is a really interesting time. We have a lot of things going on in the world in terms of the aging population, Gen Y and Gen X in the workplace, Gen X leaders trying to juggle it all, dealing with elderly family members, plus children, and the pressures of it being a leader as well. So I really wanted to interview our guest today because I think she's got something really unique, that she's still leveraging her expertise as an expert in her space and public market, but the corporate market are really starting to connect with her and to be able to leverage her skills, particularly for organisations looking to retain and support and grow and nurture a really great talent. I also have interviewed her today because I want you to hear about how you can think about it. We see a lot of people who are sometimes working in the mental health space and going through experiences of high volume and just physically trying to fit everybody in. There's long wait times and things like that. So I think Cait has a really interesting experience and approach in her practice that she has agreed to share today. So our guest today is Cait Wotherspoon, and I hope you enjoy the interview today. Hi, Cait. Thank you so much for being part of the show today. I'm so thrilled that you are here. I know how busy you are. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Jane. I'm so excited to be here.
Cait, you have a really fascinating story. Are you happy to share a little bit about your journey and how it's got you to today in terms of your work as a grief expert?
Mhm. Yes. Well, a funny thing, when I started, like I was 7 years old when I decided what I wanted to do in my life,
7.
and I've actually done it. I've done it all except being a prima ballerina. I was too short. I wanted to be Margot Fontaine. That was first on my list.
Was it?
Yeah. But then I wanted to be a nurse, a teacher, and a psychologist. So I've done all that, plus being a psychotherapist and art therapist and sound play therapist. So it's so I sort of said that when I was 7, and then it sort of evolved into that somehow as well.
Yes.
So um, yeah, so my cousin actually talked me into being a nurse.
Right.
So, because she was, so I became a nurse, and the first couple of years I spent in Gladesville Psych Hospital, as it was called then,
Right.
and that was a great learning. I spent a lot of time in the lockup ward there with very ill people,
Wow.
and then I went on to specialise in oncology and palliative care
Right.
and did the certificate in that and
Right.
spent years and years in that and nursed my dad who had lung cancer and my aunt who sort of had every cancer under the sun. You name it, she had it, and she had it taken out. And she was a registered nurse too. So it was sort of I wanted to keep, talking about these people, but I found it really, really difficult. I went into, after nursing, I went into teaching,
Right.
and then I taught primary school and adult ed at TAFE.
Right.
And in TAFE, I got to see the refugees, like I taught them
Okay.
literacy and numeracy. And it
Right.
was really hard for them to understand what our life was like. So it was me learning their life and them learning ours
Right.
and how much they're expected to fit in. And
Right.
then in primary school, I saw all the kids, with, I usually got all the troublesome kids that I called
Right.
effervescent kids, who
Effervescent.
often had, yeah, they were all the kids that had ADHD or some medical problem because I was a registered nurse. And
Right.
I absolutely loved them because they thought differently to
Right.
everybody else. They
Right.
were just brilliant.
Were they?
And yeah, so, but the grief around their families and the trauma that they suffered, that sort of sat with me as well.
Right.
And then because of those careers, I realized that grief is all around us. And I also had a miscarriage in 1982 where I wanted to talk about my miscarriage and nobody wanted to talk about it
Right.
because it wasn't a baby yet.
Oh.
So, yeah. So I sort of, when I went into psychotherapy, I specialised in grief
Right.
because I found nobody wanted to talk about death or dying or anything.
Yes.
And one of my really good friends had brain cancer, like um, incurable brain cancer.
Wow.
And it was really hard for people to talk to her, let alone about her dying.
Right.
And then after that, her death.
Okay.
So it's like, I want people to be able to share their stories and share the generations. Like, if you don't keep sharing people, they
Yeah.
don't exist. Like, it's
Yeah.
like they die twice. So I really wanted to get people finding their story to be able to share and
Right.
knowing what to say.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so if we fast forward, sorry, Kate.
Yep. Well, then in 2003, I opened
Yes.
my own practice then.
Right.
And then I, started getting, I was not getting a lot of people. And
Yes.
then I sort of, I was talking to people. I did a lot of talking to communities and, different things and volunteering for different places as well. So I
Yeah.
got a lot of clients from there. But
Yes.
people still aren't wanting to talk about death and dying or
Yeah.
grief. So
Yes.
they, generally my clients come in and say, my friend said I'm going crazy, so I need to talk to a professional. But
Right.
what they're feeling is grief.
Right.
And
So they're
because
struggling with words to it and
yeah,
right.
and their friends are feeling uncomfortable as well. So,
Okay.
it's like that they don't want to talk about it because they feel uncomfortable. So it's sort of teaching my clients how to be and how to train their friends to be with them as
Right.
well.
And so now today, Kate, you've got this incredible messaging, which is all around rediscovering joy, which is, it's, you've got the positioning around working with people through grief, but you've got this fantastic promise, I think, where you help people rediscover joy. And for those who are listening, you might be thinking, well, how if she's done this sort of with people who are probably paying for themselves, they're coming to you as clients, how do you make something like this work with organizations? Like, do organizations typically work with someone like you?
Yes. I've actually had quite a few
Right.
come to me and just say, one of our people have had someone die. We don't know how to deal with it. We want them to feel comfortable coming back into the company. So
Okay.
I've had quite a few businesses calling me and seeing, what can I do for them, and how can they be helpful and support people coming back into the business.
Right.
Yeah.
And isn't that, that's such an evolved way of thinking now, because like you said, it was like, oh, well, the way we used to cope was, just not talk about it. So, but coming back into the workplace, we've got this shift in thinking around the well-being of our people, and not just part of well-being is, yes, there's mental health, there's physical health for those organizations that might be doing fatigue management, or it might be if they've got people traveling or whatever things they do. But this is a really different part of wellbeing around how do we support a team member who has had who is experiencing grief, and how can we all come together to sort of support this person. I think this is a really fascinating, because there's a few things going on, right? You've got an aging population, you've got Gen X leaders who make up the bulk of the leaders in the workforce, and their challenge is they've got little ones. They're the sandwich generation at the moment, because they've got little ones and they've often got elderly parents that they're looking after. So these leaders that are that sort of age, is that they're dealing with not only a lot of pressure, but if they're dealing with death and grief, they're already trying to deal with a lot of pressure. They're in a really senior role, plus children, plus staff, plus all these things, and then trying to cope with loss perhaps in family. So they're a really vulnerable group of leaders in organizations at the moment that are perhaps going through this, and you're seeing it across multiple industries.
Yes. And there was one business up in Queensland that actually contacted me. She wanted me to see her employee.
Okay.
And I saw the employee, and she didn't want to see a professional just yet. She'd been through a traumatic situation, but she said, I really don't want to talk to you. And I said, that's okay. It's all right that you're not ready yet. And so I rang back the business owner, the CEO, and said, I would like to present to you and your company, what you need to do to support her.
Great.
Because
Fabulous.
it's like, because
they're not actually struggling more than
yeah,
perhaps the person who's going through their own processing. It's just the people around them who are actually struggling. That's a really good distinction.
And sometimes the person is still numb. They don't even know what's going on yet.
Right.
Especially, with such traumatic things happening around people, and with COVID happening, it was like, okay, your person is dying in hospital. You're not allowed to see them, but you can, contact them via the iPad, have a Zoom to say goodbye, and that's it. So, and then only a few people were allowed at the funeral. That's the whole tradition stuff gone. And the whole grieving, the beginning of grieving starts with the funeral, with everybody together saying, I miss so-and-so, they were in my life because. So,
Wow.
because over the past, like since COVID, we've been told how to grieve, really. Here's the Zoom link. I've been to so many funerals on Zoom, it's ridiculous. And it's the saddest thing ever.
Is it?
To see, just the close family at the funeral, wherever they're having it, and then everyone's on Zoom. You see hundreds of people on Zoom. And it's just, you just want to hug people and cry with them. And it's just so distancing,
Yeah.
and then that creates the distance. Like, now how do we speak to those people?
Yes.
Because, what do we say to them?
And Cait, some of the organisations we were talking earlier a bit about the type of organisations you've worked with. So we're talking sometimes caring type industries, like, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's those who are completely different. What are the types of industries that you've found that you've worked with?
Well, I've worked with engineers, which was really interesting because the owner of this business, he was so emotionally intelligent that it was hard for me to think of him as an engineer.
Was it?
Like, yeah.
I think that's a compliment. Let's say it's a compliment.
But all his people were the same, and it was absolutely wonderful.
Wow, what a delight.
Yeah. So, and I've spoken to engineering companies, and it's like they think extremely logically, whereas
Yes.
I'm more on the creative side. So I had to have, the logical part of stuff happening, but there were other people in there who were creatives as well, that we
Right.
could have a chat. So, yeah.
And for them, were they the supporters of a team member coming back to work or something? Or
Yeah.
okay.
No, actually one of the businesses actually rang me from a funeral. An owner rang me from a funeral and said, look, this is horrible. I don't know how we're going to, like, I think she got 3 days off to grieve, and
Right.
then she had to be back at work.
Okay.
So, yeah, so he said, I don't know what to do. This is so sad. I don't know how to support her.
Right.
So the next day I went in and spoke to everybody,
Right.
and, taught them how to support her, and answered all the questions as well, like, how do we talk to her? What do we say?
Right.
And the thing is, it depends on each person as to, how they grieve as well. She might not want to talk in the first place.
And Cait, what about other industries? Like, I know we've had to talk about places that people suffer, caring professionals who suffer from, some of the challenges around their own mental health and dealing with grief in their jobs. Is that something that you've done some work with as well?
Yeah. I've done work with veterinary nurses,
Yes.
which they actually don't have any training in their training. They don't have any course that is around grief. Nothing.
Really?
Nothing of how to talk to people or anything. And veterinary surgeons are one of the highest suicide rates.
Yes.
So, yeah. So
it must be incredible pressure for them. They're very heart-sensitive people and really care about animals and pets, and because a big part of their job, I guess, is helping animals pass and having to deal with families. I mean, and we've got 60% of the population have dogs, I think, in Australia. And that's gone up dramatically over the last few years. And there's a lot of research behind, I think it's the pet council or something in America, which is the whole humanization of pets. So, we have not just the dogs, the animal that sits out the back paddock, how I grew up with my parents.
Well, that's right.
My parents think about dogs like that. My dog is between Kahlua, your dog,
there he is.
There's Kahlua. I didn't see Kahlua there. And Winston, my dog, it's a different day and age with animals, and we become attached to them. So, and I think our vets become attached to them too. Don't they?
Yeah, they do. Well, we
love
of the
our
family.
vet.
Yeah, we're part of the family at our vet. It's and they send birthday cards and and my mum's cousin actually recently, her 3 dogs died, one after the other, and her her vet sent her this beautiful letter saying about, all their life, and we'll miss all the three
Oh,
dogs, and it was just beautiful.
oh,
Yeah. And
wow.
I thought, grief only doesn't impact the person whose person has died, whose loved one's died. It's like
Mm,
everybody. An animal dies, and it's not only us, it's,
mm,
the vet, anyone that's had any dealings with them.
mm.
So, yeah.
We've got these professions. Sorry, I get a bit emotional.
Mhm.
That's really
Mm,
powerful. And
yeah.
I should mention my dad was a funeral director, as you know. So
Yep.
this I totally I'm not an expert in this space, but have been around it a lot. So I think it's a
Mm,
really important conversation for organizations to think about, because I think it's an emerging area of wellbeing, and I think you're in a really interesting position at the moment with the work you're
mm,
doing. It's so valuable. And can we go behind the scenes in your practice a little bit to talk about the type of and you can share as much or as little as you like. So
yep.
thank you for humoring me. But you've got a really interesting practice, because you've got for those who are listening, you probably may or may not be aware, but you've got a lot of things happening in this industry with the growth of mental health challenges that people are having. It's not unusual to have, sometimes like a 9-month wait to work with a counsellor or a psychologist at the moment. And so people are suffering in organisations. We know that EAP providers, I spoke at the
Oh,
EAP conference before COVID. We know that baby boomers, Gen X will be the ones who will hold off on support, but we've got a large amount of people in organisations who typically prior to about 2018, 2019, was that EAP providers provided typically about for a 1% of an organisation would need that help. Now that's around 5%. And because
yeah.
we've got a high rate of Gen Y coming into roles that make up a large portion of the workforce. You've got nearly 50% of the workforce, and that's driving that demand for EAP support. And so I think organisations are really in a challenging situation to work out, how do we continue to provide this support for people? And you're now coming into a stage in your practice, because the challenge for someone like yourself, and for those listening, you might be thinking, well, I'm a similar type practice to Cait, in that I'm very one-on-one, and I'm working at a lower price point than you might be, say, what's seen as an executive coach or something like that, working at $500 to $1,000 an hour. And you're trying to balance your pricing with public market, private market, getting your pricing right. And then also having an offer that you can still support your clients that you're working with one-on-one, but be able to work out, how am I going to serve in a more leveraged way. And so you're working on a new program at the moment, is that right? Which is a group kind of online space. I don't want to divulge
Yep.
too much. Are you happy to tell us a little
Yep.
bit about how you've come to this realization, um, and how it's going to work?
Yep. Well, we're only allowed to see so many clients per week, and I'm at capacity and have been for years, for a
Yeah.
long, long time now. And I'm just wanting to help more people, because there is more grief around. There is more, death and dying. We need to learn how to grieve and how to help people and support people in their grief, not
Mm.
hurry them along. So I want people to learn to slow down and grieve, and people be okay with them doing that.
Right.
So this program that I'm doing is called Creatively Grieving to Rediscover Joy, and it's all it's um, every week I talk about different subjects, but I also give you a creative thing to do to support that. So
Okay.
it's either art based or there's 3 different things that you need to do each week,
Okay.
and it's exciting, and
That's
I want
fantastic.
more. Yeah, I want more people to express their grief and understand their grief. So in order to do that, I have to go online
Yeah.
to get more people in and see more people, because the one-on-one is just not enough to
Yeah.
support me.
Yes.
So, support my family as well. So it's, I think it's a great way to get to talk to many as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. Great.
So,
That's
yeah,
exciting, Kate. So they're going to,
yeah,
you'll still have your one-on-ones, but you have a way that people can access you, and, you can work with 10 people, 100
yeah,
people, 1,000 people. I think this
yeah,
is where people like yourself that are in situations where they've got really high demand. I think you're really leading the way with what other psychotherapists, psychologists, counselors, and to be able to kind of work out a way, how am I going to be able, because this demand is overwhelming, and
yeah.
we've got to get better at being able to work with and facilitate, not just because I'm guessing that in the past, sometimes you might have a group program and it might be 6 people in a room or 8 people in a room, but that's just not leveraged enough
No,
anymore,
that's right.
expertise. So
Yeah.
you're really at an exciting time and cutting edge, and I really take my hat off to you for doing this, because it's a scary space sometimes, stepping into so much technology and things.
Yes.
To run a group public program is quite admin heavy. How are you going to do all this?
Yep. Not me.
Yeah, right, that's the right answer.
I have an amazing team behind me.
Yes.
Um, you included, like
Oh, very kind.
you are my coach who has led me in this on this journey.
Yes.
So and helped me learn who I need as well, because I am a person that can do everything no
Yeah.
matter what,
Yes.
and burn out
Yeah,
really, really well.
absolutely. Yeah.
So now I have a social media manager who does all my social media.
Your socials are
So
fabulous, by the way.
yeah,
For those who are
thank
listening,
you.
jump onto Kate's socials. She's doing a
Yeah,
great job.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I absolutely love my Laura, because we have our monthly conversation, and she says, "What have you written? This month is about so and so. This is what we're going to do." And she does my social media planning for me, sends me the stuff. I send her stuff, she sends me stuff, and it's all done magical.
Great.
So,
We love people
and
like Laura.
yep, yep. And then I've got Anne, who is my VA,
Yes.
who does my newsletter for me. I send out a newsletter weekly, and
Great.
then she puts it onto my website as well,
Mhm.
and she's doing my Kajabi and all that stuff that I
Right.
just have no idea of. I'll be sending, I send her stuff and magic happens.
Magic
So
happens. That's what we
yeah,
want.
you just need a good team around you. And I just have meetings with her. Yeah. And
Right.
it's just getting clear on what you need as well. Because
Yeah.
what's in my head, because I'm a creative person as well, I'm not very
Yeah.
logical.
Right.
And the way I speak, sometimes people get a different idea of what I'm saying. So
I
I have the
see.
picture in my head, and
Yeah.
I've got to clarify that.
Yeah.
And they'll send me stuff, and then I go, oh, okay, right. To make this clearer for you, I'm going to say that. But I think, oh, okay, that's actually not what I wanted, but here's an idea of what I want. So, and then there's a bit of back and forth, and then, yeah, it's done. But we'll get better at it.
Yeah.
It's a huge learning curve for me right now.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's,
Oh, it's great, Kate.
yeah,
And Kate, I have
yeah,
to ask you, I don't know if people ask you this, but I have
yeah.
I find it really fascinating about, from your perspective as a grief expert, there's a lot of discussion with AI, and there's a few new companies that are creating these virtual realities of, they're capturing people while they're alive, and
Oh,
they're capturing, they have all the what do you call them? All the things on their
Yeah,
body.
those spots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spots so they're creating all the digital version of people, and they're capturing their voice and saying all sorts of words so that they can. And so after a person passes, that people can feel like they can still talk to them, they can communicate with them. So AI and picking up perhaps things that they've said or think, or so they're able to talk to these
Virtual reality.
virtual versions
Yeah.
of someone who's passed. Do you, in your opinion, think that that will help people through the grieving process or not?
See, when I first saw this, I thought, oh my goodness, that could be so damaging for the
Right.
people if they're by themselves,
Okay.
sitting with their loved one, just having a chat, because they ask them thousands of questions while they're alive. And then any questions the person who's grieving asks them or talks about, that
Yes.
person has an answer. But if you're sitting at home, like when you, are in the early stages of grief, you're numb, you're in shock, and your brain is trying to make sense of the death. Like, how am I going to live without this person?
Yes.
And it's like you have a grief brain that is trying to make sense of your life right now,
Right.
because without that person, you feel you can't exist. Like, who are you now? You were a wife, a mother, a lover, and now you're a widow, and that's it. So I just I I think it needs to probably be used by professionals, if at all, because, it would be lovely to speak to them. And that's where, the magical thinking comes in, and wishful thinking, like, I really wish I could have one more day.
Right.
And if you're getting that one more day all the time, what's your brain doing? It's really
Does it
confusing.
allow us to heal and
Yeah, yeah,
move?
and to understand your own grief,
Yes.
and understand that you exist in this world without the other person now,
Right.
and that
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
Photographs are different,
Right.
because you can talk to that person, because we have um, oh gosh, it's gone out of my head now, continuing bond with
Right.
the person who has died. It's
Yes.
in a different way. You can look at the photo, like my husband's here.
Yes.
My husband is here.
Yes.
That's him at 30, though.
I was going to say, is that recent?
No, not at all. I updated it. Isn't that ridiculous?
It's
Interesting that I've done that. But he sits there. He was only 30 then, so it's an awful long time ago. But if I had, I'll update that, because he had a massive heart attack at the end of last year, and I
That's right.
could sit. Yeah, he was in hospital for a long time, and in and out of hospital, so I could sit and talk to his image and know what he would say. So my brain actually said, he's in hospital, he's in good hands, I'm okay.
Right.
So, but if you've got the person sitting across from you, I think that would be really, really hard to understand that they're dead.
Yeah.
It's without a professional saying, if you want to sit with your person now, but it wouldn't be in the early stages, I would imagine, for myself,
Right. That
because
would be really interesting.
yeah,
What
yeah,
happens where this goes.
yeah,
So, Kate,
yeah, that's
I have to
right.
ask you, with your practice, tell us what have been your insights or biggest learning from running your practice, and what advice would you have from someone who's perhaps thinking about going down this path and this journey into this world?
Yep. Don't be afraid. Because my biggest fear, do you know what? I was really fearful of being successful, and really fearful of not, of
Right.
everybody hating me.
Okay.
So, yeah, and that's not the case. There will be love-hate, as there is in, in life. So I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and they're not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So, so don't worry about it. Don't
Right.
worry about what you're doing. Get clear on what you want. Like, I think get a good coach if you can, first off, because I've been through quite a few coaches that weren't helpful. But if you can get a great coach, that would be really helpful to be able to get your plan in place, get your business plan going, and know what you need on your website. What else? What money you need, what support you need. So if you're, a psychologist or a psychotherapist or counsellor, you need a good supervisor to support you. So, what else? I think, and confidence. Be confident that you know stuff and you've lived through stuff. Like, all mine is lived and learned experience, and people want that. People want you as well. They don't want, they don't want the academia. They want you. They'll find you and be the face of your business because, that gets people in, which always surprises me.
Does it?
Yeah. Oh, it's really funny because, people go, like, I saw you on Instagram and you're amazing. And I thought it was like a 10-second thing that I did. And it was just a thought bubble that I had that I went on. And it just clicked with somebody. So you'll always click with somebody. Know that you will.
Yes.
And it's okay, it's okay. You've got to fail as well.
Yes.
It's okay to fail. Don't be afraid. Still scary, but do it.
I love that. That's a great, Gail. So, Cait, sorry, you said, don't be afraid. You said get clear. Sometimes you need a coach to help you to get clear. Have a business plan so you know where you're going. You said be you, and even though it's scary, it might be, but don't undervalue your face and who you are. Yeah, I think it's really great. Great advice. It's been such a pleasure to have you today, Cait. You've got a really fascinating practice, and I think you're really playing at the pointy end of what people need. And I'm super excited for you that you're finding a way to help get to more people, because I think that's a real challenge for a lot of mental health practitioners, and trying to deal with the volume and demand at the moment. So, Cait, if people want to find out more about your work, if they want to follow you, where would you like them to go?
I'm on caitwotherspoon.com.au. I'm on Facebook under Cait Wotherspoon, Instagram under Cait Wotherspoon. I'm on YouTube. I do conversations with Cait, which people absolutely love. I talk to experts in grief and people who have been through grief as well. And you can sign up to my newsletter on my website. I'm also on LinkedIn, but not as much as I should.
Not as active as the others.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's great, Cait. So we'll have it in the show notes. So jump onto caitwotherspoon.com.au or .com.
No, .com.au.
.com.au. Cait, thank you for joining us today and for all your generosity and sharing your insights and learnings. We can't wait to keep following your journey and wish you every success for the future.
Thanks so much, Jane.